Hello, everybody. Welcome to
Everyone.
this session. I am pleased to introduce to you Fabrice Bernard. Fabrice is located in London, but is part of a French group named Theodore. He's one of the two co-founders of Theodore. We started, I think, something like 15 years ago, I believe, or close to.
15, yeah, soon 15.
Yeah, close to 15. So you can see that Theodore Group was a startup with two employees or two people, two co-founders 15 years ago, and they survived the famous 5-year ordeal, and they've went through, and they have had a growth that is quite amazing because they are now more than 700 people. And they spent quite some time about thinking how to manage such a fast-growing company, to the extent that Fabrice actually compiled with Benoit, the other co-founder, a very interesting story about the Lean Tech Manifesto. So Fabrice, I'll hand over the floor to you.
Thank you, Catherine. So yes, I'm very pleased to share with you today what we've called the Lean Tech Manifesto. And the premise is, if you're here listening to all these lean speakers, it's because you want to fight the big company disease. And the reality is you're not alone. Everyone is frustrated. I mean, everyone. The majority of people are frustrated by the big company disease. Just to give you some numbers on that, in a survey of more than 7,000 HBR readers, the numbers are less than 40% of people found typical bureaucratic process to be very helpful. So we've got a majority of people who don't really believe in these bureaucratic processes. And another telling one, nearly 40% of respondents said their ability to deliver value would be unaffected or even better enhanced if corporate headquarters were reduced by a third. So can you imagine, you like fire a third of headquarters and half the company believes that's going to be a good thing. And what is very interesting is this, I think what captured the best this frustration against bureaucracy, against the big company disease, is really the Agile Manifesto, which when it came out in 2001, really like started some kind of like wildfire around this idea that there were other ways to work. And the result is that now everyone wants to become agile. A number from 2017, 94% of companies, that was in a survey by Deloitte, reported that agility and collaboration were critical to their success. So we really have this concept, agility, that has captured the mind of all the decision makers in the world who say, yeah, it's very important. We want to be more agile. So the question is, why hasn't everyone yet become more agile? And this is what I want to dig into together. Look at why one of the biggest blockers, which is that I believe the Agile Manifesto does not work at scale. It does not scale. And then look for alternatives, and in particular, look at the connection between Lean and Agile and explain why Lean is probably a source of a lot of thinking we can use to make something that feels agile work at scale. And then actually our proposal of what the Agile Manifesto could look like if you wanted to make it work at scale, which we call the Lean Tech Manifesto. So the photo I just shared with you of people in shorts with a lot of post-its is actually from when I attended my first Agile Open in 2011. So it was a 3-day conference in the middle of Alsace with all the pioneers of Agile. It was very, very inspiring. We've been doing like things that we believed was Agile, but it's really, that was a real trigger to go much further. And so thanks to your help, we pioneered a mix of Scrum, really disciplined Scrum by the book, with practices from extreme programming, strong influence from DevOps, and a lot of good ideas from Lean Startup. And this helped us create the Theodore Agile team. So a small team of software engineers with the client inside, working very fast on software projects. And Agile was magic. We really went, it was day and night for us. because before it was a struggle to build good products, because we'd have like not the right methodology and the right incentives with our clients. And all of a sudden we had a client that was very happy to get a better product. And for two main reasons. First, the client was part of the team. So all of a sudden the team success was their success. And the team delivered value daily and reacted to problems immediately. So it was really clear to the client that, you know, we were going in the right direction very fast. But it was also much better for the team. The team was much more engaged because they had autonomy, and they were in direct contact with the client, so they could see the impact of their work. So that was amazing, and it scaled horizontally very well. So that meant all of a sudden we could take on a lot more projects, and the teams would be much happier, do much better work. And my job, which was chief firefighter, kind of disappeared because people were much more empowered on the problems they had and didn't need my experience anymore. So of course, that inspired us to think, okay, how do we spread something similar, you know, different ways of working across the organization? And what we realized is that applying agile methodologies everywhere didn't work. It didn't help non-software teams really well. It didn't address collaboration issues at scale. And it also didn't help us really on our leadership challenges. And with hindsight, what I want to share with you today is that we realized the Agile Manifesto does not scale. So it was not the right tool to look at for these kind of issues. And I'm going to try in a few minutes to like illustrate that. Let's start with individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So that's a very strong idea of Agile, which says, you know, why put so many processes when a team of people interacting directly with one another do such an amazing job? And really, you know what, in a small team, it's completely true. But I think there's like a fundamental issue at scale, which is the number of interactions. Once you grow the number of individuals, you know, when you've got 2 people, there's only 1 possible interaction between them. But when you've got 4 people, you already have 6 possible interactions. And what happens is when you've got 12 people, you already have 66 types potential interactions. And that grows faster and faster. The number of interactions is the square of the number of people, which means that this is not a value that can give us a good insight of what to do when we're hundreds or thousands or more. Working software over comprehensive documentation, second value of the Agile Manifesto, very strong idea, which says, and especially true in a small team, why waste so much time on specifications and coordinations when we can just focus on delivering the value to the client? So shipping working software regularly. What we've observed is that as soon as, you know, the software organization scales and you're working on much bigger projects and you're trying to produce more work at the same time, this value of saying, okay, you know, let's build increments very quickly, ends up in actually this mess of half-done things that you can't actually in the end deploy to production. And so what it shows us is that working software is a very good value, but it's just not enough guidance. Because, you know, iterating quickly on small increments is not enough to tackle the complexity of the software and of the organization at scale. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation, that's incredibly powerful. I think that's one of the big ideas that changed us when we adopted Agile, which was to say, why do we bother putting a project manager in between when we can actually put the client directly in the team? And that was incredibly powerful. The problem is when you scale, and you have, you know, a client organization that is much bigger with a lot of different stakeholders, and in front, like the teams to deliver, you've got actually multiple teams to deliver that value, then you can't just rely on customer collaboration because you can't put everyone in the production team in front of the client to answer the questions directly. Finally, responding to change over following a plan. Probably, you know, what embodies Agile the best, because, you know, this idea of Agile, of flexibility, of being responsive is very strong in the word Agile. And the issue here is a bit more complicated. But what happens at scale is either you've got a few teams who are agile within the organization and respond to change, but then they don't really impact the whole organization. So they don't help the organization make the right strategic turns because they don't have enough influence on the rest. Or we rely on leadership and they're able to impulse those strategic turns, but because they're not on the ground, because they lack the context, it will be very hard for them to make good decisions quickly. So once we've said that the Agile Manifesto is not the right place to start when you want to do agile at scale, it's interesting to look back at the origins of agile. And so what happened to me is actually when I realized really quickly, oh, wow, I want to transform my organization the same way agile transformed my delivery. I went back to the Agile Open the following year, and I met Antoine Contal, who was at the time a consultant at OPRA, and he was actually an agile pioneer. And at this Agile Open, he introduced himself by saying that he had experienced the limits of agile and had found a better way. And that better way was lean thinking. And indeed, what I found very, very interesting when you look at lean thinking, it is also about fighting. Lean thinking is about fighting big company disease at scale by delivering better value for customers through more meaningful work. I've put here a quote defining this from the Lean strategy. And what I find very interesting when I look at the quote is that it actually looks very similar to a quote you can find in the website of the Agile Manifesto, agilemanifesto.org. If you click on about the manifesto, you get actually the history of how it was created. And one thing you read there is, at the core, I believe agile methodologies are really about delivering good products to customers by operating in an environment that actually acts as if people were the most important. So we see that there's a really strong principle that is shared in lean thinking and in agile. It's very much about fighting the big company disease by empowering people and helping them do better work. And there's no wonder the connection is not a surprise for multiple reasons. One simple connection is that Scrum, which was a big influence of the Agile movement, was actually an adaptation of a paper, IGBR article actually by Takeuchi and Nonaka. You can find this in the paper that Ken Schwaber published about Scrum, and he quotes Takeuchi and Nonaka. And well, Takeuchi and Nonaka are two Japanese professors specialized in innovation management, and what a surprise, Takeuchi actually wrote a book about the practices at Toyota. So that's one link. Another link, which is less known actually, is that leading tech companies were also directly influenced by lean. And when I'm talking about leading tech companies, I'm really talking about the biggest ones. And a really important fun fact is that actually Steve Jobs, when Steve Jobs got fired from Apple and created Next, and also witnessed the quality issues that were starting to happen at Apple at scale once he had left, and yeah, the organization had probably lost his demandingness for high quality. He decided to look at what existed in terms of better quality management and met with Dr. Juran being one of the person with Deming going to Japan and contributing to these new ways of doing quality management that are now part of the lean knowledge body of knowledge. Another very big leader in the tech world, Amazon. When you realize actually that Jeff Bezos studied the Toyota way quite early in the journey, around the early 2000s. There's a very nice story about him deciding to create an andon in the customer service teams. So he was doing a gemba, so that's part of the Amazon culture. Every 2 years, leadership has to work in the customer service for 2 days. And so he was working in customer service for 2 days. And so a situation that would typically be solved by introducing an andon. So he decided quite quickly to create that. And what was called the big red button that allows anyone in the customer service to stop selling a product if they see that there's too many issues around that product. That lean expertise was not just a one-off. You can see it again in the letters to shareholders that he writes every year, and also in the fact that he hired a lean expert, Marco Netto, in 2006 to take charge of all the operations. So we can see that if you want to have something a methodology that helps you be agile in a larger organization, then the right candidate is very probably lean, because it shares the same strong principles of fighting the big company disease, but it's worked in much larger organizations, whether it's Toyota, Apple, or Amazon. So that's what we've been doing for the last 10 years. We've put the effort to study lean. We've worked with some of the some amazing senseis. We've read a lot of books. We've also built a community of practice of other people like us who work in tech and are interested by lean. And we've done, hundreds of Gambas every year. And so now what I want to do is to share the values that we found the most impactful, to stay true to the agile spirit, and that worked for the whole organization and at scale. And this is what we call the Lean Tech Manifesto. The first learning of the last 10 years is that there's a small issue in the Agile Manifesto, and that we should reorder it to start with the customer. So that's learning number one. And learning number two, once we've said that, how could we capture the idea that we want to be very close to the customer, but without expecting the whole organization to actually talk directly to the customer? And for that, there's actually a value that struck us really quickly, which is the first principle of lean thinking by Dan Jones and Jim Womack, which is value for the customer. And the top of the TPS house. And that works really well, because the idea is you can go much further in terms of customer collaboration if you actually try to create value for them without necessarily interacting with them on a daily or weekly basis. So that's why the first value of our Lean Tech Manifesto would be lead with value for the customer over customer collaboration over contract negotiation. To give you an example, at Theodo, we've got this practice, this is quite an old version, but we've got a practice of asking our clients their opinion on Theodo's work, to work on our improvement dimensions every week. So every client, every week, we ask them, how did you feel about the collaboration with Theodo and the quality of our work? This is very much customer collaboration. That's been incredibly helpful in showing the issues we could potentially have in the relationship and problem solving them to address them. But when we start going further, which is basically value engineering, when we start looking at, okay, are there things that the customers are not telling us directly, but that would create a lot more value to them? We spotted, for example, common feedback. We were being very successful, and so we lacked availability to respond to our customers' needs fast enough, and that came again and again and again. And so that, at some point, because we had this new logic of saying, okay, we want to go further than just customer collaboration, that led us, this is just to show how little availability we had. So green was when we were working on a project, red was when we were available. So you can see there was not a lot of availability over the next 6 weeks. And so what we did is actually create a new product. And so we created, for example, here, Theodo Certified, a platform that tests and trains contractors to augment our teams while delivering on the Theodo brand promise, which is, high quality people. And that actually worked, because all of a sudden the number of projects waiting for team were divided by 2. Clients we had less customer complaints around that. And more importantly, in terms of scaling, it was actually a huge new source of revenue, quickly reaching about a 5 million annualized revenue. So that's quite, that's way further and way better when you're scaling than just customer collaboration. So second principle, If you look at Lean and TPS, this respect for humanity, empower teams through problem solving, invest TPM, improve their working conditions. And that inspired us with something that is not just Lean, which is tech-enabled network of teams over individuals and interactions over processing tools. So unfortunately, I have to go quickly over that. So I'll just focus on probably the most, the least Lean part of it. But what is very interesting to understand is Lean brings us so much about empowering teams, about, through the activities and the competence of the team leader. But what is also super interesting when you look at tech scale-ups like Amazon or an amazing project, which is the Linux open source project, is that there's a moment when they scale, and there's this tension between we want to stay agile, but we want to scale. Typically, Linux scaled to 20,000 contributors. How do we manage that? And that was actually solved by technology. Amazon, this is a very important moment, quite famous, when they decide to re-architecture entirely their code base to make it much more modular and expose stable APIs between these modules, which means that all of a sudden, instead of having to collaborate, the teams in working on each module, they're able to actually collaborate without communicating. And that is very strong, and that can be done in, this requires first, of course, to like look at your product and make it much more modular and assign teams to every module. And that requires a lot of work on the tech side to make this modularity actually real on the tech side. And another example, so Linux did the same. They really re-architectured the kernel quite early on to make it much more modular. And then there was also this challenge of collaboration around these modules, which was solved when Linus went mad for a month and created a new collaboration tool called Git that made collaboration between all the teams much easier, much more seamless, which, by the way, has become like the standard now in the software world. Now everybody uses Git, this once a month side project from Linus Torvalds. Third principle that we looked at what the TPS says on that, and really it's about, Jidokan just in time. And that for us is a much more explicit way to scale than just saying working software. So that's why we say produce higher quality with right first time and deliver continuously with just in time over working software, over comprehensive documentation. Two quick examples on this. The introduction of Kanbans on our large projects, or on all our projects, by the way, but of course, much more impactful on large projects. And when we say Kanban, really trying to be as much as possible close to what it would look like in a lean environment, which means, so just to give you some context, so this is typically all the increments of work that we're working on. So each little card represents an increment of work. And then we've got different teams working on these increments of work. For example, the design team, and then tech team doing like a technical design. Then there's like the development team, and at the end there's like the product team validating. But what is very important to make it like a more just-in-time kind of enabler, first is to really make the inventory visible. So not just one column, but actually a work in progress column and an inventory column. And that allows us to really quickly see, oh, wow, we've got a huge bottleneck on the technical design. Two more things we need to do, make it clear that we're not structuring around steps of a workflow, but really around teams, because what we want to see is where the resource bottlenecks are. And another thing is make lead time very visible, which unfortunately is not the case in this example, but we've since then iterated and made the lead time visible in every car. On the quality side, and so on right first time, well, the big idea is to really try to detect defects as early as possible, and we went as far as detecting them at the dev level. So when they're coding, when they check their code in the browser or in the mobile simulator, the code doesn't act as expected, then they consider it a defect, and then they can actually use that as an opportunity for problem solving and learning. And finally, there's this whole part of TPS, which is about helping learn at scale as an organization and do it continuously. And so that's why we decided that the fourth value was building a learning organization to be able to continue innovating, over responding to change, over following a plan. And I think on that, a good example is you can have as many teams as you want doing problem solving and really improving locally, but you'll see the impact at scale only if these teams share their learnings. So one way we do that, we've created an academy. And so we look at multiple pieces that have been encountered by the team. We do that for, for quite a amount of time. And then this informs the creation of a standard. So I've just shared the good debugging method standard. That's a key step in making the learnings of multiple teams much more shareable to the new teams, to the newcomers, also as a refresher. And one important thing here is to make sure these standards stay fresh. And so for that, we run regular Kaizen workshops, and then we share the results of the Kaizen workshops using the 6-step format. And this is a typical example. And once you have standards and you make sure they stay fresh, well, then you can't really replace training to transform that information into knowledge. And so we've launched an academy, and so on different topics, we've got weekly dojos that people can attend. Did it work for us? Well, we started our lean journey in 2012. We've, 10 years later, we are doing 90 million revenue with 700 people. So it's worked for us from a business perspective, but it also worked for us in terms of people. 2 years ago, we had an 86% recommendation from people recommending to their friends to come to work at Theodore. So if you want to learn more about all these topics, I only had 30 minutes, so I had to go super fast. There's an amazing book written by Catherine, Learning to Scale at Theodore Group. But there's also a new book, the Lean Tech Manifesto, which will come out in March 2024. And I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabrice. That was really super quick because there's a lot of content, but super interesting. I think we have a lot of reactions, positive reaction. The Lean Tech Manifesto I really recommend when it's published in March, because you will find all the details of what Fabrice told us on the Amazon and the Apple and the Linux stories. Is there, I don't see any open question right now. I have one for you. You mentioned the impact of Lean on your business, but what was the impact of Lean on your own activity as a CTO or as a co-founder, as a boss? Did it change your life?
Yes, it changed my life. Yes, I think it changes you in very interesting ways, and it really helps you scale, because it gives you a system, or it's more than a system, but it gives you a way of working that allows you to produce very high quality. So when you're a demanding person, usually as an entrepreneur, you want to improve the way the world is. You're very demanding. It's a system. It's a way of working that allows you to strive towards that very high quality ideal without micromanaging everyone. And micromanaging of everyone is not only bad for people, but doesn't scale anyway. And so lean thinking gives you all these ways you can deliver better products for your clients. And do it at scale, and not do it because you're the mastermind that is the bottleneck to growth of the company, but actually by helping people within the company grow and think harder and bring all their creativity to the table and improve the products.
We seem to have a question. Why JIT and Jidoka over working software? The goal is to deliver working software to clients. JIT and Jidoka are means to develop people.
Super interesting. So first, I'm not saying that working software is a bad thing. And that was probably out of the 4 values, that was the one that was not that was not bad in itself. It was just not specific enough, and therefore not enough of guidance. Whereas I found that JIT and Jidoka were much better guidance on the delivery side, on the production side. And yes, it's lean, so it's about developing people, but it's also very much about the production side. You know, it's not about how do I redefine my products, which is more the value for customer part. And it's not so much about how do I organize myself, which is, you know, the tech-enabled network of teams. I think JIT and Jidoka really touched the part, which is how do I make sure that, you know, the parts at the end of the flow are good quality and delivered fast.
If we had another half an hour, I guess we could also develop the fact that right the first time brings in quality, cost reduction, blah, blah, blah. So yes, it's more detailed than just working software. And we had one last one. Any daily improvement touch points or weekly that you use?
Yeah, I've skimmed very quickly on these things, but we use Scrum, and I find Scrum to be an amazing foundation to do Lean on top. If you do it in the original way, in the original Scrum, it said you should look at your burned out on a daily basis, make sure your increments are less than a day, and then inspect and react if you're late. And so we've kept that culture of saying, okay, every day we look at if we're late, and we look at the problems we've had, and we do problem solving. So we try to have daily problem solving culture in every teams.
Great. Well, I guess we have to stop there. Sorry. Oh, there was one last one. Can you see it? Yeah.
Was first of all motivated by you or your CEO? Was the long road to motivate teams or evident shared choice?
He's the CEO. He's the co-CEO.
So yes, we're two co-founders, and we take decisions together. So let's say we were both very much aligned on that. Probably Benoit slightly more, slightly feeling the need more because carrying a bit more of the weight of the company, for sure. And then at the time we were quite a small company, and we were like about a dozen. So yes, there was less transformation needed as in an existing organization, for sure. But then there's like continuous transformation needed. So yeah, those are true.
Well, thank you all for being there. Didier had another question or comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, we have to switch off because there are many other interesting sessions. Thank you for being there, and we'll be off. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
And thank you, Fabrice.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everyone.